Well, it is our final show for 2022, and we are going to end it by going over each series in their 2022 season. We're going to be discussing from the performers of the year, the teams of the year, and also look over some drivers that have disappointing seasons looking for a better 2023. But before we get started there, I'm going to go over my experience and my first time going to the Snowball Derby in Pensacola, Florida, and it all starts right here on 3 Wide. So before we get started on this week's episode, let me tell you about my sponsor, Hunt to Harvest. Now we're just a couple weeks away from Christmas, and if you're doing some last minute shopping for someone who is into the outdoor life and all about hunting, then hunttoharvest.com is where you need to go, where they have a wide selection of shirts for both men and women, as well as some new choices of hats in their catalog. And if you're looking for stocking stuffers, they have them there as well. Just go to hunttoharvest.com. That's HUNTTOHARVEST.com. And when you go to checkout, be sure to enter the promo code RADNEY18923. That's RADNEY 18923 for a special discount at checkout. So on this past Sunday, I was able to attend my first Snowball Derby in Pensacola, Florida at Five Flags Speedway. Not only was this my first time attending it, it was my first one covering. And I got to tell you, I had an amazing time down there. I was able to go there earlier in the year and cover the SRX race. And while that was a great experience being around all the legends of the sport, it didn't have the same feel as the Snowball Derby. Now, the SRX race, they're, a younger series. They don't go to every track, the same tracks every year. But when you go down to the Snowball Derby, it is like their Daytona 500. I mean, it just had a big race feel to it. I got there about an hour after gates opened on Sunday, parked not too far away from the track, just down the road from it. This family was selling parking in their yard for $10. And when right across the street, they were parking for $25. So I figured take a couple extra steps, save $15. But it was easy getting in and out as far as walking to the track. I got in with ease. And first thing I did when I got there, I did a lap around pit road, around the backside of it, just to kind of check out the cars, see what the crews were doing, and seeing who I could see out on pit road from as far as the drivers are. And I got to say, if you are a fan of NASCAR, if you are your driver or a driver you like is going to this race, it is worth every penny to go to it. And getting a pit pass, especially if you have a kid who is into the sport and he just wants to meet, he or she wants to meet a NASCAR driver. This place puts you front and center. The pit pass is worth every penny. I've seen multiple families down there, parents with their kid down there, drivers like Eric Jones. He had quite a line for fans wanting autographs and pictures from it. He was gracious with his time, enjoyed, had no problem signing the autographs, and as well as drivers like Noah Gregson. He was another guy who was very popular with the fans, and it was a lot of fun just getting to see these guys kind of relax, just there to race. And also got to see Freddie Kraft, who is the spotter for Bubba Wallace, and Derek Kraus, who was there spotting for Derek, and also co-host for Door Bumper Clear. That he was very gracious with his time. I sat on the pit wall just down from him, just a few feet, and he just constantly had people coming up to talk to him and took his time with. I mean, they sat there and he would chat with people, 5-10 minutes at a time, just no rush, just happy to talk to people. And that was great to see. The race overall, it was incredible to watch. The crowd was so into it, so excited. And for me personally, it's amazing what a difference 20 to 30 degrees makes as far as my experience at the track. Because that SRX race, it was pretty warm and I was struggling there towards the end. But here at the Snowball Derby, it was an incredible time. I got to go to the back stretch. They had a little stand where you could go up, and I was able to watch a few laps on the back straightaway. Fans were tailgating, parked all in the infield. They sell special passes for that. They were having a big time. It just was a huge event feel. This was their 55th running of it. Derek Thorne, who has led so many laps over the past few years, he just had never been able to break through and get the win. And this year, they normally run 300 laps. They had to run 315 this year with all the overtime starts, and he led 307 of them out of 315 and was able to finally get that Snowball Derby win. This was his team, the team owner's last race. They were selling out. They're getting ready to go enjoy time with family. And Derek Thorne was able to put them in victory lane and probably their biggest race of the year. So that it was just to see his emotion from winning that race. It shows how much it means to him. And watching the race, I mean, the 307 laps led that was pretty spot on for how dominant he was. The closest guy that could keep up with him was Josh Berry. Josh could stay within a car length or two with him, at times, but unless Derek Thorne had something go wrong with his car or lap traffic in front of him did something crazy, he was not going to be beat. And you got to see guys like Ty Majeski and Eric Jones get tied up. Eric Jones' car got destroyed by Ty Majeski coming out of a corner. Eric was not too happy with that. And Josh Berry had a couple run-ins with Hunter Robbins down there. Bubba Pollard started out strong, but there towards the end, he just had no tires and just faded to the back. And that pretty much, Sammy Smith was there. That he had a strong run and went to make a 3-wide move for the lead. Ultimately didn't, but he had a very impressive Snowball Derby weekend. But all in all I can say is, if you have not been to a Snowball Derby, you need to go, no matter where you're from. I mean, there were people from Canada that came down to watch this race, and it was worth every minute, every penny to be down there and to experience that. And like I said, spend the money, get the pit passes, take your kids with you, get them down there around those cars, around the drivers. If I was still a kid and down there in that, I mean, I'd have been having the time of my life. And even at 30 years old, I was having the time of my life. So it's a great event to go to. I can't thank Five Flags Speedway, Tim Bryant, and his crew enough for giving me the opportunity to go down there and cover that race. And while I don't think I'm going to be able to be there next year, I will be making plans to hopefully, Lord willing, be there in 2024. And it's great to have a track and that big of a race so close to home. And yeah, it was a truly great event. I strongly encourage everyone listening to go ahead and get some tickets whenever they go on sale and go see it, because you get a chance to see some great short track, super late model drivers, as well as the drivers you see on Saturdays and Sundays in the NASCAR on national TV. Go down there and mix it up with them, and it's a truly great event. Fans love it. Everyone's going nuts. You need to go check it out. So this week's episode, and really the final episode of 2022, we're going to be going over the 2022 season for all three series. And it was a very exciting year for the Trucks and Xfinity and Cup series. We had first-time champions in the Truck series and the Xfinity series, and 19 winners total in the Cup series. And we had the emergence of several new contenders across the board. In the Truck series, you had Corey Heim and Ty Majeski really let their presence be felt. Each driver got 2 wins, their first career wins in NASCAR. Majeski, both his wins came in the final 4 races of the season and set himself up, gave himself a shot at the championship in Phoenix. And while he came up short there, he definitely was in the running for that race, and overall had a solid season. Even before the 2 wins, he was very consistent. And it seemed like when he was finally able to break through Bristol and get that win, uh, he just kind of had a weight lifted off his shoulder and really went full steam ahead. So he's going to be a guy to keep an eye on. They haven't announced the driver lineup for ThorSport next year. I believe they said it'll probably be a couple more weeks before they're ready to announce that. But I have no doubt that Ty Majeski will be in that truck again next season, going for another championship. Corey Heim, he's going to be sticking with Toyota, going to Tricon Garage. And I expect him to win multiple races as well. He showed a lot of talent this year and potential in this truck season with his part-time starts. Even when he wasn't winning races, he had a lot of speed, was leading a lot of laps. So those are two names to keep an ear out for next season. Looking across the season at all the races, one race that stuck out to me that was probably the most popular win in the Truck Series, if not the whole NASCAR season in general from all three series. And that was Parker Kligerman at Mid Ohio, driving for the Henderson brothers in that 75 truck, where he's given them so many good runs. He's given them a win already, but this one just felt a little bit different. It just it seemed like it really set Parker up for an even brighter future. And the story of his career, where he's been with some of these top teams and never really got a true chance to show his potential, his talent. And he got with the 75 truck team where they give him, a handful of starts throughout the season. And he always has that truck up in contention, if not for a win, for at least a top five, and able to get into victory lane yet again with this team. And that led to him getting a full time Xfinity ride next year in the 48 car. So hats off to him. He seems like he's finally going to get his due and get a true shot at a top ride. And little honorable mention was Carson Hocevar. He had a good season, a little inconsistent, but he did have three second place finishes and was close to getting that first career win several times, more than that. He just has to start making better decisions. You look at the deal at IRP where he spun Colby Howard head on into the wall. That was just a really poor decision that he has got to have a better head on his shoulders about. And then purposeful cautions where he was spinning himself out on purpose, and it was blatant that he was doing it. This guy has the potential to be a true fan favorite. He is someone who the fans already were getting behind before all those incidents. So if he can kind of mature and move on from these poor decisions, this is a guy who could be a most popular driver in the Truck Series, in the Xfinity Series, and the fans will get behind him and truly fully support him. Another driver that had a good season was Matt DiBenedetto. While I was expecting a better season from him, he just had one top five and seven top tens. He did complete 98% of the laps on the season. He's just got to raise that average finish up. He did get the win at Talladega, which was his first win in all of NASCAR. That's got to feel like a huge weight off of his shoulders. And it seems like this team is truly behind him and willing to continue to ride with him, as he will be back with them next year. Now he's just got to pick it up. He would be, especially early in the season, be running up in the top 10 and look like he was due for a solid day, and something would happen like Atlanta where he got up into the wall going for the lead. Just got to make better decisions. Hopefully with a year of experience under his belt and all these laps that he completed. I mean, 98% of the laps over the whole season, that's really good. Now you just got to put the finishes together to put yourself into playoff contention and try to move yourself further down the line. Now, on the flip side of that, there were some disappointing drivers this season. Say disappointing as far as, expecting more from them, and things just didn't quite pan out this way for whatever reason. The main one has to be John Hunter Nemechek. He was a championship favorite again for the second straight year, and he failed to make the final four. He did finish the season with two wins and still has a bright future with Toyota. But for him to go from Cup back to Truck Series, where he's had the most success in his career, and to be with a top team like Kyle Busch Motorsports, I know he felt like the championship was probably a given, and maybe that got the better of him. I don't know. I don't think that was his thinking, but even though he didn't get the championship, he's still impressed. He showed he is a top young driver who owners need to be paying attention to. And he, like I said, bright future with Toyota. He will be with Joe Gibbs Racing. They just announced in 2023 in the Xfinity Series. So while he didn't get the championship, he does continue to stay with a top team and keep moving forward. Now, the next driver was Hailie Deegan. She did have two top tens compared to one just last season, but her average finish was down just slightly, and she couldn't seem to break free from the mess of what is the top 20, 20 to 25 drivers in the Truck Series. If it seems like if you're stuck anywhere from 20th or maybe 18th to 25th, you're kind of in the eye of a storm. There's a lot of inexperience there and a lot of over aggressiveness in that area. And She did have a debut in the Xfinity Series, and it was a solid debut. Driving that '07 car, she finished in 13th. I thought that might work its way into a full-time Xfinity ride for next season. However, it looks like, according to rumors, nothing official yet, that she will be back in trucks, but this time with Thor Sport, who's making the swap to Ford. Again, these are all rumors, nothing official yet. And while it's disappointing to see her back in the trucks, I feel like the Xfinity Series would be better suited for her, where she could really truly learn and progress her career. To be with a top team like ThorSport, which has put out some championship drivers and championship contending drivers like Ben Rhodes and Matt Crafton, and this year we saw with Ty Majeski and even Christian Eckes, who had a great year. This will be a good opportunity for her. I hope it goes well for her because I think she has the talent. She's just got to put the finishes together, and the time is now if she does truly end up with ThorSport. And going back, what I talked about, the most popular win performance of the season of the whole three NASCAR series, the single race performance of the year just for the truck series, looking back, has to be Grant Enfinger at RP. He had a decent regular season, but and he came out of the gate strong in the playoffs. He won at IRP and then follows that up getting three more top fives to start the playoffs and was looking like a guy, this could be a dark horse, a upset pick for the championship. And while it didn't turn out that way, he still had a decent season for his first year with GMS. Uh, like I said, during the regular season, he was decent. He would go on a hot streak, but man, if he can put together a regular season like he did the playoffs, he's going to be in pretty good shape for next year's run to the playoffs. So, but that was definitely the performance of the year. He came out of nowhere and had a great race, stayed up front most of the day at RP, and was ultimately able to get the win to move on to that next round. Now, swapping over to the Xfinity Series, you had Ty Gibbs getting his first championship, which was not a surprise given the runs he had in his part-time year in 2021. He won 7 races. But to me, the driver of the year has to be Noah Gragson. These were the top 2 guys in that series. So either one of them, to me, is the rightful champion. Ty Gibbs was able to get it done when it counted and gets that championship. But Noah Gragson, he was the top driver in wins, top 5s, top 10s, and laps led in the Xfinity Series. I mean, he was a guy who week in and week out was who you were going to have to go through to win. You also had his teammate Josh Berry prove he belonged in the series, in the national ranks, in the top 3 series of the sport. He got 3 wins and got himself into the final 4. I mean, his first full-time season, at least in the Xfinity Series, and he's going for a championship. Luckily, he has Tire Pros coming back next year and Bass Pro Shops joining as well to continue his Xfinity career. This is a guy, and Dale Jr. is very high on and thinks he could be a cup driver, could be a cup champion if he gets the right opportunity. So luckily he's got a guy like Dale Jr. in his corner to continue on his career, because there's a lot of talent there, and I hope we see more of Josh Berry in the years to come. But as far as other drivers who emerged and made their presence felt, the Xfinity Series was full of them. I just picked 3 out to point out that stuck out to me, and that was Austin Hill, Sam Mayer, Sheldon Creed. They all had solid debut seasons. Austin Hill obviously started out the season at Daytona, won that race, and then wins at Atlanta. And not surprising that he won those tracks, because he is a really strong super speedway racer, but don't write him off as just a super speedway racer. I mean, this guy had competitive runs at almost every style track. And especially there towards the end of the year, this guy just built that momentum and kept it going. And he's going to be a guy to watch for the 2023 Xfinity Series Championship. I think this guy's going to be a force to deal with for many years in the NASCAR series. While Sam Mayer and Sheldon Creed, they had growing pains throughout the season, especially the early part, Sam Mayer just seemed to get more consistent towards the end of the season. He had 7 top 10s in the final 10 races. And we know this kid is really good on the short tracks. He won in his truck debut at Bristol. He's really good at Martinsville. And so I expect to see him in Victory Lane next year. Meanwhile, Sheldon Creed, his success seemed to come in waves, mainly in the final stretch of the regular season when the playoff field was kind of starting to get set. He was able to come from 17th in the point standings all the way back up to 13th with a potential shot at getting in the playoffs, and nearly won Darlington in exciting fashion in a battle with Noah Gregson and Kyle Larson, and had a couple top five runs here and there. And hopefully, what he would need to do is just get more consistent with it. That's the big thing across the board. With any driver, is get more consistent. And what I like about Sheldon, he kind of strikes me as the old school racer. You see him getting out mad at drivers who he got wrecked by, and he doesn't go in the ambulance and then go get in front of a camera and start talking to people. He's going to let them know. He's going to let them know they're number one. Then he's going to go get in the ambulance. And this guy was mentored by Robbie Gordon, so there's some fire to him, and that's what NASCAR needs. They need these personalities. They need these drivers that basically ain't going to take no crap. That's what they need, and I think Sheldon could be that guy for the sport. But on the flip side of these drivers, you did have some disappointments. Daniel Hemrick, the defending champion, just 3 top fives, 14 top tens. This was not your typical Daniel Hemrick year. He is a consistent driver. He only has the one career win, which won him the championship, but he is week in, week out, his years in the Xfinity Series, he's a guy you can count on to be in the top five, top 10 at the end of the day. And that's what keeps him in those chances for wins, chances for championships. Now, he will be back next year with Colleague. Hopefully, he's able to put some of that consistency back together. But he's definitely got to be looking for some answers. And then Jeb Burton, he went from Colleague Racing over to R Motorsports and got 0 top fives, 0 top tens, left the team at the end of the season. Plans are to be determined right now. The real question is, I want to know is, how did this happen? Because our Motorsports, with their runs briefly with Brett Moffitt and all the previous year, they seem like a strong team, a real good mid-tier fringe top 10 team. Did they expand too quickly with three full-time teams, excuse me, with Brett Moffitt, Jeb Burton, and Anthony Alfredo? Now, Alfredo was the best of all three drivers. He was the one that was up front more than any of the others. Brett, he was let go partway through the season due to sponsorship. Jeb just never could seem to get his footing with the team. Now, I don't know where he goes from here. It definitely wasn't anything for the highlight reel, but it's a big question as far as to what happens also to our Motorsports, not just Jeb Burton, from this point on. As far as performance of the year, before we get to that, I overlooked this guy. Honorable mention driver who had a great season, and that's Trevor Bayne. He made just 9 starts for Joe Gibbs Racing, but in each of those starts, he was a guy who looked like he could win that race. He won 2 poles, 5 top 5, 7 top 10s, and like I said, he was a guy who was in contention every single start. He led laps. He was in the running. Most of the time, he was running second or third. Just could never quite get through, go through the glass ceiling to get that win. As far as his plans for next season, I have no idea on those. I hadn't seen any rumblings on that. Could he possibly go part time with Joe Gibbs again? Who knows? If this was indeed it for Trevor Bayne in a competitive ride, I think he did show the talent that he has always had, that everyone believed he always had. He just pretty much got saddled with a team that was on a downward slide, like Roush Fenway Racing at the time. And it's just, I look at those kind of situations and just think, what a waste that, what other drivers have kind of slipped through the cracks through no fault of their own, just the equipment they were in. But I hope to see more of Trevor on the track. I like Trevor. I feel like he's a good voice and a good personality for the sport. And we will see where he goes from here. Performance of the year, you got to give it to Noah Gregson. He won 4 races in a row, and what was really a career-defining season. He's been good up until this season. He's been a race winner, but this year he seemed to really put it all together and be able to finish off races, get the most out of his car when he couldn't, be in the right spots. I mean, you look at Darlington where Larson and Creed were going hard at it, and Gregson, he's able to sneak by and get the win. And that's part of that's what you got to do. You got to take advantage of what's going on in front of you when the first and second place drivers are more concerned with themselves. So I look for more big things from Noah Gregson. He moves to the Cup Series with Petty GMS, and I want to save all the. I'm trying to save all the 2023 stuff for next season for the preview. So I don't want to dive in too far on that. But Noah Gregson was the performer of the year with his 4 wins in a row, and also just his whole season in general. He was the dominant guy. Probably should have been the guy holding the trophy, but ultimately with the playoff system, Ty Gibbs got that, and rightfully so for him. So Noah Gregson, former of the year. Now swapping to the Cup Series, you had Joey Logano get his second championship in a season that started out strong, but felt like it really limped to the finish. The next gen car, that was the story all year long from the preseason all the way through to the end of the year. And the next gen car, I will say it delivered on the 1.5 mile tracks. But the short tracks and road courses, they're the ones that suffered, especially early in the season. That first Martinsville race of the year was not good at all. And I know NASCAR, they were working on the packages, trying to figure out a way to make those races what they were. But also, going back to the 1.5 mile point, the next gen car also delivered on what they said it would, parity. We had 19 different winners, and the car definitely brought what NASCAR said it would. Teams like Trackhouse, Petty GMS, Richard Childress Racing, they took advantage. Even Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing was more competitive than in years past. So I feel like it definitely brought the field closer together. It really fit into the hands of more of the drivers, I do believe. Now, where it goes from here, because we did have some issues, which we'll get into here in just a minute. But I definitely feel like this is going to be a positive car for the sport. But the concerns with it, that's what's got to be addressed. We had drivers getting hurt this year, which we hadn't had to deal with to the level we did this season. It's been a while, probably you could say 2001, 2002, back before they had the safer barriers and even really every driver out there with a Hans device on. And with Kurt Busch's injury at Pocono, that it seemed like all the momentum that this sport had at that point in the season, it just came to a screeching halt. There were a lot of questions coming into the year about the safety of the car, and we saw there was plenty of reason for concern and plenty of reason for questions. And it was mainly with the rear impact of the car. It wasn't drivers hitting head on that was the problem. It was if you back the car into the wall, that's where you were going to be in trouble, which is completely different than what we've dealt with in years past. Then with Alex Bowman's injury at Texas and Cody Ware, who did hit head on and had an ankle injury, but with Alex Bowman just barely touching the wall at Texas, and next thing we know, he's out with a concussion, and you see the replay of him in car and his head's bouncing around. I think that's where everybody in the sport, fans, media, drivers, just kind of threw up their hands and said, enough. We don't want to do this anymore. I think the drivers, I don't want to say quit, but I think they didn't go full 100% the rest of the season just for that concern. Because you see, it's not going to take a lot to put us out. And then you had Tyler Reddick at Martinsville, where on a restart, there was a traffic jam. He hits the car in front of him, and a car behind him comes and hits him in the back, and he has to pull out, and he quits the race. Not saying he shouldn't have. He wasn't feeling right, so he was smart and got out of the car before hurting himself even more. This is stuff we haven't seen in a while, and I don't think fans, media, nobody seemed like really knew how to take it, how to react to it. Yes, react with this has to be fixed, but it's new to a lot of us. This is a whole new generation of drivers from years past that did have to deal with these safety issues. So, but NASCAR, they are working on it. They've been at the R&D center. They've been meeting with the drivers. So that's what I think they should have been meeting with the drivers earlier than what they were. But it came a point in this season where the injuries and safety of the car became the storyline instead of the races. And that's a shame. It's never good when that becomes the storyline. because now everybody's waiting for Tuesday, Wednesday with, okay, who's out now with a concussion, and that's not good for the growth of your sport. And even the playoffs were a little lackluster this year. You did the most exciting part of the playoffs. You had Christopher Bell and Chase Briscoe's run for the championship there at the end of the year. Chase Briscoe, who after his win at Phoenix was pretty much non-existent all year, gets to the playoffs and just keeps finding a way to point himself in. Like, he cannot be defeated. Was he going to make it to the championship four and go back to Phoenix where he won his first career race and do it all again and surprise everybody, win the championship? Christopher Bell, he won two races at the end of the year that were a cutoff race, and if he didn't win, he was done with the championship, and he was able to take walk-off wins, and it was incredible to watch. And of course, you had Ross Chastain's move at Martinsville, where he literally did not let off the gas in Martinsville going into turn 3, rode the wall in 3 and 4, passed enough cars to get in the final four, denying Denny Hamlin a chance at the championship. That is a highlight that will be in NASCAR forever. You'll see it in every promo, like you see the 1979 fight between the Allison brothers and Cale Yarborough. You're going to see it played consistently at the Hall of Fame. That is going to be a big part of the sport from here on out, and it rightfully should be. And just talking about Ross for a second, this is what I like about Ross. Kind of like Sheldon Creed, I said he's kind of old school. Ross Chastain to me is that old school personality. He is really the most blue collar driver out there, in my opinion. He's comes from a long line of watermelon farmers. He's literally scratched and clawed his way to get to where he is now. He drove for I don't know how many years in start and part back marker cars across the board, across all 3 series. He finally gets his shot with Nice Motorsports and the trucks, Chip Ganassi and Xfinity and even Cup, and makes the most of it and shows that he can drive these cars. Now, he is aggressive, but to me, his aggression is different from other young drivers. When he wrecks somebody or gets into somebody, and he will say, if they get back to me, then I deserve payback. And when payback is given to him, he doesn't, start throwing things. He doesn't start complaining about the driver, how the situations were different or anything. He literally just says, I had that coming. We saw that with Denny Hamlin earlier this year after Gateway and after Pocono, where Denny Hamlin had taken Ross out of the Pocono race. And you can call it payback. You can say it's not payback. But Ross said in his interview, I had that coming. The way I have raced him, it was going to happen. That is such a huge difference from what we have seen from other drivers over the years, and it's refreshing. That's what I like about Ross is he's refreshing. He's just a guy who wants to go out there and race. He's going to race you hard, and if you race him back, then oh well, so be it. And I'm not comparing him. I'm not saying he's the next coming of Dale Earnhardt, but look back at the Dale Earnhardt stories from these veterans where they talk about being so mad at Dale after a race, and Dale would just come up, put their arm around him, and smile, and you'd forget you were even mad at him. Now, Ross isn't walking up to him and putting his arm around him and just smiling, but he's obviously doing something to get these drivers to kind of move on from it. Denny Hamlin had plenty of chances, plenty of opportunities, and plenty of reason at Martinsville to take Ross out of the way and out of the championship, but he didn't. They raced hard, but there was no wrecking. There was nothing over the line, just good, hard, short track racing. I don't know how that happened. I mean, that's what I would have expected to happen is Denny just to go in there and run him up the track or spin him out. So I am truly a fan of Ross and what he brings to the sport and the Cup Series. And outside of his run this season in the playoffs, like I said, as well as Christopher Bell's and Chase Briscoe's, there was no real drama. There was no rivalry renewed or no rivalry started. Was it because of the new car with the lackluster racing we would see at short tracks and at road courses? Was it because these drivers maybe weren't pushing the envelope as hard as they could with all the injuries we've seen? Were they just simply trying to survive? And you could see there towards the end of the year, mainly Chase Elliott, but also several other drivers, nobody seemed excited. Nobody's, besides maybe Ross or Christopher Bell, that they were going to the championship race. I mean, Chase Elliott, especially, he just seemed like at these media sessions, he was just towing the company line and just trying to get to the end of the year. And I get it if he was truly like that, and other drivers were as well. It was a long, hard season with this new car. There was a lot going on. There was a lot of frustration, aggravation, and at some point, these drivers are just going to check out and just try to get to the finish, try and stay healthy. So I'm not knocking them for being that way, but it just seemed like this season, especially towards the end, everybody was just trying to get to that checkered flag at Phoenix and call it a day. Now, you did have two drivers surprisingly go winless this season, and that was Ryan Blaney and Martin Truex Jr. They did not win. Now, Blaney did make the playoffs and had a good run for him to have not won a race and looked like he could go into the championship race without a win. But ultimately, he was knocked out of the playoffs, Martin Truex Jr., because he didn't have a win, and we had so many different winners. It was between him and Blaney for the final spot. Blaney got it, so Truex didn't get to go for the championship. And they're going to be looking to end this winless streak quickly in 2023. Blaney, he could, I see him being the first one to go to victory lane. He's strong at super speedways, strong at Las Vegas and many other tracks, and I think both these drivers will end up back in victory lane in 2023. Now, the performance, or really the team of the year, I've been just shouting out single drivers. I'm going for a whole team as far as performance of the year, and that's Trackhouse Racing. They came out of the gate with speed and was able to keep it pretty much all season long. And when they came out, after 3 or 4 races, you think, okay, other teams are going to catch up to them, and this run's going to be over. But it never went away. Ross and Suarez were both consistently in the top 10, top 5, running up there towards the front. And you had Ross get his 2 wins, both at Coda with an exciting finish with AJ Allmendinger. I'm sorry, that was not a dirty move. AJ moved Ross first. Ross paid him back. Simple as that. And Daniel Suarez getting his first career win, and really was the most competitive he's been in his whole entire Cup career. And if he had been able to keep it clean and avoid other people's mistakes and maybe not made a few mistakes of his own, I think he would have been a multiple time winner on the season. And it seems like both these drivers have really come into their own and found a team that they can gel with, owner that gets behind them, believes in them, and is going to support them. And that is huge for these guys and their confidence, because these are 2 guys, while Suarez has had more accomplishments in his career with the Xfinity Championship and all, they still both have kind of went through the same things. Suarez, he was kind of the can that got kicked down the road. He went from Joe Gibbs Racing being shoved up into the Cup Series when Carl Edwards retired to getting kicked to the curb there. And he goes to Stewart-Haas Racing, only has 1 season with them. He gets kicked to the curb there. Then he goes to Gaunt Brothers and makes the move from there to Trackhouse Racing, where honestly, when it was announced, what was it, 2021, when he was, Trackhouse Racing was announced and that Daniel Suarez was going to be the driver, I figured that would have been his last stop in the Cup Series before he went back to the trucks or Xfinity to try and rebuild his career. But this team has really come on strong, and Justin Marks is like Sheldon Creed, like Ross Chastain. He is a breath of fresh air on the ownership side of it. He's engaged. He's a personality that you can kind of stick to and want to follow. And I think he will be great for the sport. I hope their success continues on. And I mean, I think Suarez and Ross, they could be mainstays with this team for quite a while. So Trackhouse Racing, they were the performers of the year, the team of the year, really, for the Cup Series. And that will wrap up 2022 for 3 Wide. I want to thank everyone again for joining me and listening along. I hope everyone has a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we will be back on January 30th for the first show of the 2023 season as we get ready for the Clash, which will kick off on February 5th, the next Sunday. So I hope everyone has a safe off season, and we will see you in 2023.